I'm not ashamed.
What was the name of Moses' second son? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking through the Bible.
Of his word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 18. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 6. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 18, beginning at verse 1. And Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel his people. The Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back with her 2 sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land, and the name of the other was Eliezer, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came up with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. Now he had said to Moses, I, your father-in-law, Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. In our last episode, we had the children of Israel camped at Rephidim. While there, 2 important events are recorded for us in chapter 17. The first is the fact that again the children of Israel murmur for water. It was so bad, Moses feared for his life. God told Moses to take his rod and strike the rock, and water would come forth. Moses did that, and the water came forth, and the people drank. The second event was the battle with the Amalekites. The Amalekites lived in the Arabian desert, so it shouldn't be a surprise that they might come up and fight Israel, for they believed that Israel, in their large numbers, were invaders. However, instead of inquiring as to Israel's intention, the Amalekites simply attacked. God, through Moses and Joshua, delivered Israel in battle from the Amalekites. The way he did this was that Moses stood on a hill, and whenever Moses stretched his arms out, Israel prevailed, while when he let them down, Amalek prevailed. Naturally, this would be tiring for Moses, so Aaron and Hur got a rock for Moses to sit on, and they held Moses' arms up so that Israel would prevail. After the battle, God told Moses to write these events down, and we have them recorded for us in the book of Exodus, for in the future God would utterly destroy the Amalekites for battling Israel here. All of this brings us to chapter 18. Children of Israel are still in Rephidim. They won't leave there until chapter 19. Jethro, the priest of Midian, and Moses' father-in-law, heard what God had done for Moses and Israel, and that he brought Israel out of Egypt. He therefore wanted to go and see Moses. Along with him, Jethro brought Moses' wife, Zipporah, as well as Moses' 2 sons. If you recall back to lesson 14 of our series, at the end of chapter 4, all of Moses' family left Midian in order to travel to Egypt. Along the way, though, the Lord attacked Moses because he had failed to circumcise his son. Zipporah circumcised Moses' son, presumably his second son, and threw his foreskin at the feet of Moses. Zipporah and the children then returned to Midian, while Moses and Aaron journeyed to Egypt. How long it was in between chapter 4 and chapter 18 is not entirely sure, but it could be as much as 1 year. We often like to read of the plagues of Egypt as recurring one right after the other, but that simply is not the case. God used the natural phenomenon of Egypt as well as the things Egypt worshiped in a miraculous way in order to plague Egypt. Doing so would have required a little time. Add to that the travel time between Midian and Egypt, the first time Moses and Aaron had to go the longer way around the Red Sea, and it could have easily been a year since chapter 4. We're again in this chapter given the name of Gershom, Moses' firstborn son. We already knew his name from chapter 2, and the name itself means stranger there, or stranger in a foreign land. However, Moses' second son is not named there. He's named here for the first time. His name is Eliezer, which should not be confused with Aaron's son Eleazar. Eliezer means, my God is help, and he was so named because God helped Moses escape from the sword of Pharaoh. Now, of course, reading through this quickly or reading it out of context, we might assume that the help God provided to Moses was the exodus from Egypt that we just have been discussing. But remember, Eliezer was born before the exodus, not after. Therefore, the help God provided Moses was Moses' escape from Pharaoh the first time, when in chapter 2, Moses killed the Egyptian. Thus, reading a chapter in context helps us avoid these types of mistakes. Jethro, as we said earlier, wanting to see Moses, brought Moses' wife and children and came to meet Moses in the wilderness where they were encamped at the mountain of God. It should be said, though, the children of Israel were not at Mount Sinai yet. That wouldn't come until chapter 19. They were at Rephidim. Why then is this referred to as the Mount of God? because they were in the region of Horeb near Mount Sinai. This area was a mountainous region and included Rephidim. We'll continue with this story, the Lord willing, in the next episode. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 18, verses 7 to 12, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.